equipment and just through a software upgrade now have the ability to integrate it once the equipment is certified with the spectrum access system and be able to operate on more spectrum, maybe even cleaner spectrum, but also be part of this whole new Part 96 that the FCC established. So what we saw here and what we've been seeing is a lot of competition among manufacturers to outsell each other. You've seen a lot of deployment from companies that are looking to get into this new band and figured, hey, why don't I just buy the 3.65 now and then use the additional spectrum for more capacity and even more coverage down the road. So we saw a ton of competition. I've done road shows for a number of manufacturers, and it's been and that were adopted in and Republicans, commission areas, and longer. They did that in October. And that allows the public to file comments in response to that petition. And the deadline for that is December 28th, so 1 week from today. Those comments are due to be filed at the FCC. And what WISPA is going to be filing its own comments, and those have been drafted and still have work to be done on it, but we're asking our members who might agree with the positions that WISPA is taking, or even if you don't, to participate in the public process. When we asked you to do this over the summer, about 60 WISP filed letters saying please don't do what T-Mobile and CTIA are asking. It was really very good and compelling stuff, and I thank everybody who contributed to that process. It was really very helpful. We were actually able to use some of that to get the FCC to modify some of the language from its draft notice of proposed rulemaking to the one that was actually issued. So about on Monday, WISPA sent around to its members a list of suggestions for filing comments regarding the notice of proposed rulemaking. And it went into things like what are the changes that are being proposed, what are the issues you might want to address, what are some of the data points you might want to hit, and here's how you file with the FCC. So that's where we are at the moment. I would say overall WISPA will be asking the FCC to preserve the rules as they are with respect to priority access licenses. There are other issues involved in the proceeding, but things that matter most are conducting PAL auctions for larger geographic areas such as PEAs is something that I think, as I explained a little bit earlier, is not anything that WISPA believes is going to be appropriate, especially for our members that operate targeted localized businesses in primarily rural areas where you're looking for more coverage and more spectrum to do that with, as opposed to the mobile carriers that are looking at more non-rural areas where the densities are higher to do more of a small cell or a 5G type approach. So that's kind of number one, and number two is asking the FCC to keep the license terms short. WISPA has said publicly that we wouldn't be opposed to a 5-year license with one 5-year renewal so long as we keep those census tracts, the geographic licensing unit for the priority access licenses.
Gotcha. So really in this particular instance, we have primarily two major issues. The one is, of course, the PEAs, and we actually demonstrated the PEAs yesterday, the size of those. And in my area, St. Louis, the PEA includes all of St. Louis, all of St. Charles County, all of St. Louis County, the entire county of Jefferson, which is south of St. Louis, and the entire county of Franklin. So these are huge geographic areas, and if I was going to go bid on those, the big problem that I have is that I am going to be competing with AT&T, T-Mobile, all those types of guys, because guess what? They are interested in that St. Louis market, and I may not get any PAL, because they are going to price out the St. Louis market outside of my PAL pricing. So it is very important that we actually file. So, Steve, can you go into how exactly does a person file these comments?
Well, a number of ways to do it, but I think what works best for WISP operators is to use your company letterhead and kind of go through the checklist of stuff that WISP has suggested that you do. So you want to provide an introduction of what your company does. You know, if you're, and some of this you may not be willing to reveal to the general public because these will be public comments. But the more specific you can get, the better off we will be. The FCC is going to look at the substance of the arguments made, not overbroad statements, and not necessarily how many people are saying it. But we do think that having a strong show of strength from our membership will be very compelling. So first thing, what does your company do? How many customers you have? What part of the country do you serve? How rural is it? What service do you currently offer? In other words, what sort of speed tiers might you have? And then as appropriate, and not all of these will apply to everyone, is what sort of investments have you made in 365, especially if you've made those in reliance on those rules that were adopted back in 2015, in April of 2015. What are your plans for gaining access to the CBRS band? Why do you need it? Is it to relieve congestion? Is it to expand out into new areas? Is it because you think LTE is a real game changer? Is it because you've bought 3.65 gear and you know it's software upgradable and you've made investment decisions based on that? So how would expanding the geographic area to an area larger than census tracts affect your ability to make competitive bids at the auction, what Dennis was just talking about? Because you'd have to acquire a much larger area than you plan to use to connect unserved or provide better service to your existing customers. And I'll show you a couple of examples that kind of foot with what Dennis was talking about in St. Louis in just a second. What are the benefits of getting access to another 100 megahertz of mid-band spectrum, or up to 100 megahertz? Have you reduced your investment based on the threat of the proposals in the NPRM? Now, WISPA sent a survey out to our members a couple of weeks ago, and two of the things we asked about were how many people, what percentage of people have invested and deployed based on the rules that were adopted in April of 2015, and about 63% of those who responded said that they had, which I found to be kind of a good number and probably a little higher than I would have expected. We also asked how many of you have reduced your investment or curtailed your deployment just based on the threat of these new rules. In other words, the fact that these PAL areas may change significantly. And I was surprised to see that 60% said that they'd already modified their behavior based on just the threat of these new rules and the possibility or probability that they would not be able to acquire priority access licenses. If you have an experimental license, explain what the purpose of that trial is and what you're learning, and also talk about the problems that that getting access to additional spectrum will solve. So will it help with congestion? Will it help with throughput, quality of service, interference, what have you? One thing that we think is really important is show maps of your service area. So if you can show your service area and where the PEA boundaries are and identify areas where the mid-band spectrum would help you connect additional customers, that's going to be really compelling stuff. Focus on consumers. This is really about consumers. It's not about big companies or little companies. I mean, it is, but it isn't. But what are the consumer benefits that you hope to bring about? One of our nation's highest priorities is curbing and the gap, or bridging the gap, of the rural digital divide. There are 23 million rural Americans that don't have access to broadband. This is spectrum as infrastructure, as I like to say, that we can use to help solve that problem. And for rural providers, focus on extending fixed broadband service to those Americans that lack broadband or lack choice. Those are some of the messaging points that we think people should keep in mind as they prepare their comments. And I should say, overnight, one of our members up in Alaska, I'm going to embarrass him a little bit, but he actually wrote out some draft comments that he's going to be filing and gave me this map of Alaska. I'm going to try to tilt it so you guys can see it. not doing a very good job, but suffice it to say, this is an extremely large area of Alaska, and the PEA is the area bounded in red. And the area that he serves, you can see that little line with an arrow pointing to it. Okay, and this is attached to the comments that he's filed. And you can do a KMZ, you could do your own mapping. I'm sure, Dennis, you've got some mapping tools that you guys could use as well. But the population of this PEA is 145,000. It has, listen to this, 346,000 square miles. This company is serving 5,000 customers, and its coverage is only 186 square miles. That's less than, well, that's about 0.5% of the entire land area. So the point is, why should you have to acquire 99.5% of land area when your current footprint, obviously you want to expand that out a little bit, only covers 186 square miles of 346,000 square miles. So that's a great example. Here's another one. This happens to be something that WISPA plans to use, and this is the PEA that includes kind of northwest Oklahoma, or northeast Oklahoma, southeast Kansas. So can't really see very well, but there are 10 counties in the PEA, and if you only wanted to serve, let's say, this little community over here, why should you need to have to buy all 10 counties, which has, I want to say, about 60 different census tracts in it. So those are a couple of examples of how you can demonstrate how these rules just don't fit with your business model and the area that you want to serve or the area that you want to edge out to. And obviously, I do realize that people may not want to reveal too much about their bidding strategies or areas that they might want to serve, but I think most people are pretty comfortable talking about that if it's going to help the industry at large.
There we go. So I had a couple other questions. So one, you've kind of mentioned what we should be putting in our comments. Really good stuff, really good data. How real formal does these comments really need to be? I mean, do they need to be...
Hold on. I'm still here. I'm still here. This is the automatic light switch. Hold on 1 second. Let me get the lights back on.
Yeah.
There we go.
You aren't moving enough.
Yeah,
I know. I've just been sitting here, not moving enough.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that.
So my question is how formal does the comments actually need to be? I mean, are they going to listen to, my partner Jim sitting there typing and listen to what he has to say? Or do they need to be very formal or not?
They don't need to be formal at all. And in fact, stuff that comes from business owners who are 100% truthful in what they say, always, well, not always, it's a perfect complement to what lawyers say in legal pleadings, because the second part of this process is reply comments, and that's where everybody has an opportunity to look at the initial record and then respond to it. So for us to be able to say, hey, we had 150 WISP write in, and here's what they said, and as you can tell, this is a little problem. This is a little bit of a problem for us, and we're not going to go away. And so it's a really good compliment. If lawyers wrote all this stuff, A, it would be really boring. B, it would be hired gun stuff. It wouldn't be from the heart and from your bank account. It would be, and from your time, it would be, somebody who asked to do something for you. So doing it in the first person on your company letterhead signed by the CEO or another officer is an ideal way to file these.
Gotcha. Steve, do you have any questions on that?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. And you mentioned that, and I'll have to go check the email, but you mentioned that WISPA sent out an email with that kind of template of what to do.
It wasn't a template because we think that templates also get, once you've read one, you've read them all. We want people to kind of do their own thing, and these should be different because not everybody has had the same experience, and that's a good thing because I think all those different experiences and all those different advantages of getting access to PALs and disadvantages of having something larger and longer term, all need to be expressed, because one thing I've learned is that not every WISP is the same. They're heterogeneous, and it's good to get different perspectives and different business models, different cases, different ways of saying things. You know, some people might want to talk more about technology. Other people might want to talk more about investment. I think all that's good. It helps paint the picture that we want painted. So.
Right. Forgive me for saying template. I was meaning. That's all right. Suggested topics for discussion that focus in on what you said.
Right. And yeah. So, but I think you raise a good point. Is why didn't we give everybody a fill in the blank, you know, Mad Libs type of template? And it's because we do want them all to be different, and we do want people to speak in their own words, not words that somebody else gives them.
No, absolutely. But was there that? Not template, but just talking points sent out so we can address the...
Yeah, they've been sent out probably 2 or 3 times on the WISPA list this week.
Okay.
The first time was on Monday, and I think about an hour ago, look for a message from Jimmy Carr, who posted the guidelines below, or below an email urging people to file. I checked the record just before I came in here. It doesn't look like anybody has filed anything yet, so... the time to do it is between now and next Thursday. Don't forget about it as you're eating your angel food cake and figgy pudding, and most of all your eggnog, because you're liable to forget. So please, please, please take the time while your wife is out shopping for that new pair of underwear, or your husband is out shopping for that, you know, new pair of pajamas, to go ahead and you know, spend a half an hour, spend an hour, and make your voice to be heard. We live in a great country where you're not generally punished for speaking your mind. I'd like to think that's still the case, and it's an opportunity for you to defend your business and to do something to repel this attack, which is really what it is from the mobile wireless community.
Yeah. So is this a mail-in thing, or is it an email thing, or what?
Yeah, so what you want to do, and this is in the email, but I'll try to walk through it real slowly here, is you go to the FCC.gov website. So it's
Hold on, getting a pen and paper.
Yep. It's fcc.gov/ECFS Edward Charles Fudge Steve /filings. And then you'll see a drop-down menu in this on that page, and where it says proceedings, you want to type in 17-258. That's the docket number, 17-258. And then name a filer, so enter your company's name, not your individual name, but your company's name where it says name a filer. Where it says type of filing, you pull down the menu and enter comment, because that's what you're filing as comments. You can leave the rest of it blank, the file number, the report number, etc. Leave those blank. You can put your address in if you want, and then attach your filing, and it will upload. And then you should get a confirmation coming right back to the email address that you enter. If you don't get a confirmation, then you have some sort of a problem, and you can certainly reach out to me, and either myself or my paralegal can walk you through it.
What was the preceding number again?
17-258. This is a different proceeding than the one we filed in over the summer, so make sure you use 17-258.
Easy enough. So what is the, obviously going to a bigger section and less competition will drive up costs. I mean, even at the 2015 levels, what is a WISP looking at to purchase these things if we are successful on both fronts, a 3 to 5 year term and using PALs instead of PEAs? I mean, what would a small ISP like myself be paying for something small?
Well, it's a good question. I don't have a good answer for you because A, I'm not a valuation expert, and B, if you ask 2 economists, you're going to get 2 different answers. But It would be done on a megahertz per pop basis. So the megahertz would be 10 megahertz, and the pop would be whatever the population is in that given census tract. So 4,000, let's just use 4,000. And then you have to figure out, based on what you're willing to pay, how much that license was worth. You can look at some of the past auctions in lower bands that were over $1 a megahertz pop. I think it's fair to say that for the most part, these will probably be a little bit less. But that's again, you're talking 10 megahertz versus, you can't really compare apples to oranges, and we've never done an auction like this before, so it's really hard to say. And I do know that I've looked at a couple of economic reports, and some try to compare this to the value of the 2.5 band that Sprint holds a big footprint in, and others are sort of looking at other auctions or other comparables and coming up with different numbers. So probably need an auction expert to tell you that, but really it's a question of how much are you willing to pay at the end of the day. And
so in the end, regardless of success for getting 3 to 5 years in smaller areas, the mobile carriers could still buy up the whole darn thing. And is there any language that prevents them from squatting on it, like you talked about Sprint squatting on 2.5?
I didn't talk about Sprint squatting on 2.5. You said squatting, but I won't go there.
Okay.
But I'll say two things. Number one is no entity can have more than 4 priority access licenses, or 40 of the 70 in a given market. So you do have a bit of a cap. You can get as much of that GAA spectrum as you want. The second thing is sort of a novel approach that the FCC took in 2015, and they said, well, we're not going to have any build-out requirements at all. Because what they kind of feared was people throwing up stuff at the last minute that just is there to meet some substantial service obligation that they then have to look at. And FCC staff looking at 528,000 substantial service showings would take a long time. But the other part of this is they said, hey, let's try something like this. If you have a priority access license, if you have a PAL, and you're not using it at a particular time in a particular place, then you need to share it. And somebody else can use it opportunistically on a GAA basis. So in addition to having GAA channels, that's 70 megahertz, the 80 megahertz, the 50 that we're currently using, plus 30 between 3550 and 3650, you also can use opportunistically any PAL that is not in use. And it's like, even if you're using it in a certain part of the area, it can still be used when and where that PAL is not being used. So for instance, if somebody builds out in the center part of a rural census tract, and you want to build in the rural area, you might be able to do that opportunistically. But as soon as that PAL holder decides that they want to build out their network, then you don't have the right to use that spectrum anymore, and you might have to use different GAA spectrum. And a lot of questions about what happens when we run out of that altogether, and that's something that the spectrum access system is designed to handle, is what happens when you have contention for spectrum and still being worked on.
So that part of the proceeding really didn't change.
Right. That's correct. This really has to do about going to more of a mobile-friendly command and control long-term license, much larger area model from what we currently have that doesn't preclude that, but also doesn't preclude a lot of other uses, including those that are very important to the WISP community.
Yep. Alrighty. I guess, is there any other comments? I'm going to check on our page here, and I don't see any comments posted as of this moment in time. Anything else that you want to really hit on, Steve?
I would just say, encourage everybody to participate. This is, for many of you, this is make or break. And make or break meaning that this spectrum, for many people, many people, is the best opportunity for you to grow your business. And it's a near-term opportunity, and it's potentially a long-term opportunity. It's also the best way that we can use spectrum as infrastructure to help break down that digital divide that exists. And that's going to be a big part of WISPA's messaging and has been in the past, which is we can't live just on unlicensed and GAA alone and forever. We want the ability to be able to acquire the spectrum, which is what the FCC anticipated and encouraged in 2015, is to enable innovative uses in this band and uses that could be targeted to very small areas. So I encourage everybody to please, please, please take the time to make your own filing. This affects your business, your future business, and it's really important that folks contribute. If you have any questions at all over the next week, you should feel free to email me at scoran@lermancenter.com, and I'll be happy to help you with your messaging. If you have any glitches when you're trying to file, please don't make it at 11:50 p.m. at night. But the sooner you get to me, the more hands-on help we'll be able to give you if you run into any filing difficulties. But I think for the most part, people were able to make their filings over the summer. We encourage you to do that again, but more importantly, get your neighbor to file. Get the WISP down the road that may not realize this. You guys should be really banding together on this, and it would be really terrific if we had more than the 60 that showed up over the summer file this time, even though it is a holiday time. I would say especially since it's a holiday time. So those are, I guess, some final words, and nothing that WISPA has worked on in the 11 or so years I've been working with WISPA is, in my view, as important as this proceeding. So again, can't emphasize enough to take the opportunity to file your comments in this public proceeding, and defend your turf, and to watch out for your future.
One thing I want to throw out there, and you can verify this as true or not, but I'm seeing that the FCC is acknowledging our industry by the work that WISPA's been doing. Didn't they mention us in their net neutrality decision? I mean, yeah, we are gaining traction, and this only helps gain more traction, I would believe.
Yeah, and in fact, the chairman has talked about how reducing regulatory burdens will help bridge the digital divide. I would also say access to spectrum will accelerate that. The other thing that Chairman Pai has said a couple of times is it shouldn't be government's job to pick winners and losers. And what we have to make them understand is that if these rules change, that's exactly what the FCC will have done.
There we go.
Well, let me just reiterate what you've said. We want to check for an email from on the mail list for talking points. Go to fcc.gov/Echo Charlie Foxtrot Sierra ECFS/filings. You want to type in proceedings 17-258, and the name of the filer. You put your company name, type comment, and then you just simply upload the document that you put together. Is that correct?
That's correct. And one final thing is, if you're so inclined and you want to send me your comments as you file them, off list or on list, that'd be very much appreciated. If you'd rather not, that's okay too. So I wish everybody a very happy CBRSmas, and I was saving that. And again, please take time out between meals, unless they just all run together, to make your voice heard.
There we go.
And one last thing too: is there any idea where these PALs are? I mean, is there a map of what's proposed so we can show where we're at and what we want to do? And comment is this is due the 28th of next week.
It's due the 28th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't wait till the last minute. Trust me, you don't want to do that. And I believe that Mike Whelan sent around a zip file this week showing where all the PEAs are. So people should be able to unzip that and be able to figure out what PEA they sit in, and say, hey, here's where I am. I'm over here in this little corner. Why should I have to buy this whole big area? Why should I even have to compete with somebody who really wants it and likes big areas in order to cover just this little area? So watch for an email that came from Mike Whelan, I want to say earlier this week, maybe Monday or Tuesday, where he had that PEA. You can also go to probably Google partial economic areas or go to the FCC's website and look for their maps of PEAs. But again, there's 416 of those versus 74,000 census tracts. So you should get a pretty good idea of the dramatic and fundamental change that going to PEAs would cause.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, not a problem. And just so everybody knows, the Mike Whelan, he did send out an email. It was not attached. It was a link to Dropbox, so that you can download that. It's like 32 meg. It's not too huge. But the FCC website, I also had put up the FCC website for the submitting of filings and typed in the 17258 proceeding. I did put that up on the screen, so everybody has that. Also, a video will be available, or the video will be available online as well for anybody to download.
So,
with that said,
Dennis, can I ask you, is tower coverage have mapping capabilities to help folks out if they want to show where their areas are in census tracts and PEAs? Is that something that you all are doing? And I apologize for putting you on the spot.
No, it's okay. We actually do the Form 477. We do have the ability to upload KMLs, so if you wish to, you could actually upload your PEA onto the site, as well as any other data, and then you can overlay that with your mapping data, which is very, very useful for this particular type of filing. My recommendation is if you download the KML, you can pull out your PEA that is there. You can upload that. You can upload any of your extra data that you may need, and then you can overlay it all on top of your map. And there you go. Now you have, take a screenshot of it. That's all we need. Paste it into Word, and bam, now you have your documentation there.
Yeah, these filings are made in PDF, so or Word, but PDF is probably better. But so if you're trying to attach electronic files or links, that's not really going to do the job. So thank you for saying that and reminding me that it has to fit on an 8.5 by 11 page in order for it to make sense. And please, if you have color maps or color letterhead, make sure you produce your filing with the colors shown, not just a black and white.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, I mean, you can download, there's actually the BullZip PDF creator, so if you have a open office document or something like that, you can actually save that document. You can print it to the BullZip PDF printer, and it will pop it out into PDF. But ever since, I believe it was Office 2000, I know it's 2016 does it, but I do not remember if 2013 did, but 2016 you can save as PDF. So just pop it into Word, put all your data there, save it as a PDF, make sure it's high quality so people can see it, and then upload. Nice and easy. I also have a PDF on the screen right now. Well, it will be. There it is. And this is the partial economic areas of the United States. And this is just a Google search I did for the PEAs of the United States on the FCC website. And this actually shows you how large these things are. And they're extremely, extremely large. And especially if you are near any type of major city, chances are that major city is probably included in your PEA that you would have to bid on. So not really a good thing whenever we are really looking at competing against these guys who have billions of dollars. So there you go. With that said,
one thing I want to add, and Steve threw it out there for those that didn't have the opportunity to listen to the show or don't read their WISPA email. Get out there and talk to those guys, whether they're WISPA members or not, because this will impact them as well.
Yep. Alrighty, Steve, is there anything else?
Nope. I should mention one thing we talked about earlier. I keep thinking of other things to throw in here, but Twitter, #CBRS. If you go there, you'll see some other posts, and encourage you guys to use social media. Please do not use it to do anything except promote rural broadband and CBRS in general. It's not. Don't go trolling commissioners. Don't go trolling the mobile industry. Try to stay on message and keep things very positive, and talk about how CBRS can be a game changer in rural America, and especially for you. So if you're active on Twitter, please do that. If I see it, then I will retweet it. And also WISPA is also engaged in social media as well. So check out some of the tweets that that WISPA itself has been making, and thanks to Dennis and the rest of the board for making that happen.
There we go. Alrighty, I do believe we have one comment here. I'm just going to pull it up before we maybe see if we can get to it here. Come on, Dennis, scroll down. Oh, nope. It's no big deal. So, with that said, I think we're done.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and
Happy
guys,
holidays.
I appreciate you taking the time to get this word out before the 28th on doing a special show. So have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and we will all be talking to you probably in the new year.
Yep. And our next show is January 3rd. We're going to have Elizabeth Bowles on talking about the FCC, that's the Broadband Commission thing, I believe. Let me look at it here.
Yes.
The FCC's Broadband Deployment Advisory Committee, and that's going to be on January 3rd as well. So we will also have that show as well. With that said, thank you, everybody, and have a great new year.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business. Please remember to visit our show sponsors via the links on ispradio.com. If you're interested in becoming a show sponsor, contact us at sales@ispradio.com.
All good?
Now go out there and push those packets as fast as you can. Good luck and Godspeed.